Saturday nights with Tony Orlando. Radio 77 WABC.
I'm a Yankee fan, but that song, I like the song though, even though that's a Red Sox. They always play that in Fenway. Or Fenway, how they say it.
And lo and behold,
yeah, forget about copyright tonight. I'm going to let it play for a few minutes.
The title of this song is called A Story of My Life. Enough said. I think there's a little bit of divine intervention here. I'm searching for songs to close with. I thought I was going to close with Sweet Caroline. It would make sense. And then I come across a song called The Story of My Life. And who is it by? Neil Diamond. And I almost felt like that song was written for tonight's show. So there you have it. The Story of My Life by Neil Diamond. And I hope we've done it justice musically for you, Neil, because you've done that for all of us. Time and time again. Decades of greatness. We love you. The great Neil Diamond. And remember, I always tell you this, tomorrow's Sunday. Make it the best, most beautiful, most fantastic Sunday you could ever pray for you, your friends, your family, and for our great nation. Until next Saturday night, this is Tony Orlando saying, see you next Saturday. Tony Orlando.
know is rocking your Saturday night. Radio 77 WABC.
Yeah, it's a great radio station.
Informative, talk radio,
Saturday evenings,
music
Saturday
radio,
night, they play music.
many voices.
So that was Tony
one
Orlando.
station, 77 WABC.
Now, Mr. Sky, Dr. Sky is coming up.
WABC, talk radio.
Dr. Sky.
What the heck is going on here?
Dr. Sky Show. Midnight to 2.
OMG. And now, 77 WABC Music Radio proudly presents Super Hit Facts.
Reed Bratton from The Office was in a band called The Grassroots. Their hits include Live for Today and Midnight Confessions. He got kicked out of the band for using psychedelic drugs, mistaking his guitar for a magical accordion. He was in the band from 1965 to 1969.
Listen to the Vinny Madunio Show every Saturday night at 5. Sid and Friends in the morning.
You're not going to believe this.
The best talk every day.
And this is something so near and dear to New Yorkers.
And music on the weekends. We are the world famous 77 WABC. And now, it's time for Joe Piscopo's Sinatra Stories on Music Radio 77 WABC.
Here are some fun facts about Francis Albert Sinatra.
These little town blues.
Frank Sinatra loved New York. Born just across the Hudson River in Hoboken, New Jersey, Frank Sinatra's songbook is a trove of tender odes to the Big Apple, like the Brooklyn Bridge, Autumn in New York, Lady is a Tramp, and of course, New York, New York. Long before Taylor Swift made waves by pulling on stage her supermodel best friends, there was Frank Sinatra and his gregarious group of guy friends known by the outsiders as the Rat Pack.
We are going to join in applauding both orchestras here tonight.
I think that's swell. Really magnificent job. Now, Casey and the wonderful Quincy Jones who conducted for me.
Keep listening for more Sinatra Stories.
This is a 77 WABC News Sid and Friends in the Morning update. If you missed the show, here's what you missed. Border czar Tom Homan tells Sid about his haters and his success getting illegal migrants off the streets.
I woke up this morning to the most secure border in the history of the nation.
And Sid spoke with women's sports activist Riley Gaines about the ongoing debate over whether trans women should be allowed to compete.
We're arguing this in the highest court, the Supreme Court.
A new Sid and Friends in the Morning tomorrow, 6 a.m. on 77 WABC.
You're listening to one of the most iconic stations in the nation. An American original. Talk Radio 77 at WABCRadio.com.
This is New York's talk leader, the crown jewel of talk radio. WABC New York, WRCR Haverstraw, and 107.1 WLIR Hampton Bays. News first at 59 past the hour.
77 WABC News starts now.
77 WABC News, 35 and cloudy skies this Sunday, January 18th. Good morning, I'm Liz Redabali. Temperatures are plummeting across the tri-state area as a cold front moves in. The Arctic blast could linger over the area for several days to come, with New Yorkers not looking forward to the prolonged chill.
I'm not ready for that.
Up and down. Cold one day is high, one day is freezing. I just feel it like on my face. Everything else is perfectly fine.
Honestly, this week wasn't so bad. It was a little on the warmer side, but then it hit us bad.
The wind makes the cold even more biting, with temperatures set to drop to the teens by Tuesday and remain there through at least Wednesday. The largest nurses' strike in New York City history continues on. Negotiations are expected to resume between the nurses' union and the Mount Sinai hospital system, but Montefiore and New York Presbyterian talks have appeared to be stalled.
The hospitals are holding healthcare hostage. They have ability to sign off and give us the healthcare that we need.
We will continue to fight until we get what we deserve.
Some 15,000 nurses with the three hospitals walked off the job this past Monday. They want increased staffing, better health care benefits, workplace safety improvements, and higher pay. The hospitals, which say they can't meet those demands, have hired travel nurses to help them stay open. A federal judge is restricting the actions of immigration agents in Minnesota. In a ruling, the judge barred federal agents from retaliating against protesters. Agents are also ordered not to use pepper spray or similar non-lethal methods of crowd control against demonstrators. The order also barring agents from stopping vehicles that are following them as long as they're maintaining a safe distance. The city of Minneapolis has seen ongoing protests since the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent last week. President Donald Trump has said he may invoke the Insurrection Act, but says it may not be necessary right now.
If I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now to use it.
The Insurrection Act would give Trump the authority to deploy the military to suppress a rebellion on American soil. The White House says a number of new economic reports prove President Trump is tackling affordability in the United States. Tammy Trujillo reports.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt touted the latest core consumer price index showing inflation in check.
Since President Trump took office, core CPI has increased at just a 2.4% annualized rate, substantially lower than the 3.3% annual rate inherited from the Biden administration last January.
Leavitt said Trump is also addressing soaring home prices with the purchase of mortgage bonds. She also touched on the president's efforts to lower drug prices for Americans. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
More from the White House. President Trump says he may retaliate against countries that don't support the United States acquiring Greenland.
Well, I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security.
Trump spoke at a roundtable at the White House. The president made the remark when talking about how his threat of tariffs work to secure the most favored nation drug prices. It comes after foreign ministers from Greenland and Denmark met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio this week. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has given her 2025 Nobel Peace Prize to President Trump.
I presented the President of the United States the medal as a recognition for his unique commitment with our freedom.
After meeting with Trump at the White House, Machado told reporters she presented her medal to Trump in appreciation for deposing Venezuela's former leader Nicolas Maduro. Trump later took to social media to thank her, calling the move a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. He has yet to endorse Machado as Venezuela's new leader. If you've been scrolling on social media lately, you may have noticed that the year 2016 is trending. Well, Lisa G tells us why.
Even though the new year has just started, people have been reminiscing about the year 2016. It was the early days of social media, and in fashion, skinny jeans were big. Clay Routledge, an existential psychologist, says people tend to be nostalgic when they're anxious about the future or they're not sure what direction in life to take. It appears this trend is hitting millennials and older Gen Zers the most because young people tend to be nostalgic for the time in their lives where they felt young and free and energized. Lisa G, 77 WABC News.
Now your forecast today, some light rain and snow with a high of 35. I'm Liz Radabali. Remember the news, it never stops at WABCRadio.com.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
From the powerhouse blowtorch signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, broadcasting out of the center of the universe, New York City, and around the world, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another adventure with the Dr. Sky Experience. We appreciate you, no matter where you're listening to this powerful signal across the nation, around the world, and I'm sure the broadcast signal moving out.
Yeah, Talk Radio guy, that's this guy
During
right
our
here.
2-hour conversation with our soon-to-be-announced
Sports
adventure,
radio, Talk Radio,
we welcome you, ladies and
anything
gentlemen,
radio,
in our
basically.
participation in what we like to call dialogue
Music.
with critical thinking. The contact number, as always, is 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And in case you're a first-time listener, we appreciate you. The content here on the Dr. Sky Experience delves into the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. We like to call it Theater of the Mind, and I'd like to thank our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, for navigating this signal so it comes across just as clear and, of course, powerful as you would expect.
As we move deeper into the month of January 2026, it's amazing how fast this tiny little orb, what Carl Sagan described the Earth as the pale blue dot, moves through time and space around this rather insignificant but important star to us. More importantly, what do we have for you, ladies and gentlemen? If you've ever wondered about the great mysteries of the universe, what are we made of? How did the universe begin? What secrets do the smallest, most elemental particles of matter hold?
Everything
And how
just sounds
can they help
better.
us understand the intricacies
over the airwaves.
of space and
Exactly.
time? Since
Sounds better
1967,
coming out of a
Fermilab
radio.
has worked to answer these and other fundamental questions and enhance our understanding
Especially
of
the AM
everything we see
radio.
around us. As the United States' premier particle physics laboratory, they do science that
AM
matters.
guy.
They work on the world's most advanced particle accelerators and dig down to the smallest building blocks of matter. They also probe the farthest reaches of the universe, seeking out what the nature of dark matter and dark energy is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever wondered about this amazing subject called particle physics and that of what contains deep within the atom as we move deeper into the substrate, our very special guest for these 2 hours is Dr. Don Lincoln. He's an American physicist, author, and host of the YouTube channel Fermilab, and science communicator, too. He conducts research in particle physics at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory and was an adjunct professor of physics at the University of Notre Dame. He received a PhD in experimental particle physics from Rice University in 1994, and in 1995, he was a co-discoverer of the amazing thing called the top quark. He has co-authored hundreds of research papers and author of many books, and he recently was a member of the team that discovered the amazing and elusive item called the Higgs boson back in 2012. We ask this mysterious question before we bring on our special guest, Dr. Don Lincoln. What is time? The 5th century philosopher St. Augustine famously said that he knew what time was, so long as no one asked. But in a more scientific way, the question should be answered, and could be answered this way, as to what is time. Time isn't a universal constant, but is a relative, woven with space and into space-time. And with that, to probe the mysteries of the universe, with you, ladies and gentlemen, a show that I'm sure you may like to listen to many times because of the intricacies and the fascination of opening our minds to the mysteries. We welcome Dr. Don Lincoln to the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Very good. Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate you greatly. Let's talk about your background. It's not every day that we get to talk to somebody that delves, that is, deeper into this thing called the atom. Many people, of course, might be scratching their heads saying, what the heck are you talking about, Dr. Sky? So tell us, where did you get your interest in this, and describe the path to studying all about quantum physics and what lies in particle physics?
Well, all of us have a different path forward. My own specific one was when I was young. I was interested in questions that perhaps were once theological and eventually became philosophical. Questions like, how did the universe come to be? Why is the universe the way it has to be? Why can you put your hand through air but not through a wall? I mean, I really wanted to understand basically why things are and why they are the way they are. And, of course, the path forward to understanding that is to delve deep into science and specifically physics. So that's what started me out on this journey.
A fascinating story. Many years ago, I had the luxury of visiting at Caltech Dr. Kip Thorne, who I'm sure you're very familiar with. And recently we understand, if I'm correct in saying this, he's the co-discoverer of the quantum thing we call gravitational waves. But I was so fascinated by him, and I'm humbled to say this, Dr. Lincoln. I brought the textbook that I had, Gravitation, and he looked at me when we were doing this television interview, and he said, wow, he goes, why did you bring the book? And I said, to be very honest with you, doctor, I said, I got a C+ in this class, and I'm honest with you in the audience. And he said with that look, well, don't you understand gravity? And I said, no, I don't. And I said, would you sign the book? And he looked at me and he said, why would you do that? And I said, well, I'd like to use it as a step stool for young people, children, when we do our telescope viewing so they're closer to the heavens. And I got the biggest smile from him because I don't understand gravitation, and I think it's a fascinating subject because is it true, and I got to ask you so the audience understands this, is it really true that gravity is what, partially or all, the warpage of space-time? How would you answer that to those that may want to bring that question to the forefront?
To understand gravity, well, for that matter, to understand any type of science,
is always a little bit tricky because there are, like Shrek says, there are, layers to these things. And it is, at some level, you can think of space the way Newton did, which is simply that, I'm not sorry, space, gravity is what Newton did. It's simply a force. Einstein, in 1915, rethought things, and he came up with a new theory of gravity, which actually said that gravity isn't a force; it's just the bending of space and time. Now, this idea works very, very well. If you take that idea, and the mathematics are quite complicated, you can calculate a tremendous number of things. You can calculate things like black holes, which are mysterious objects that absorb all light and all matter that enter them. And so Einstein's theory is incredibly accurate. It's been demonstrated again and again to great detail. But like all great theories, it's incomplete. It fails when you look at the realm of the very small. So Einstein's theory of gravity, which describes, as you said, is the distortion of space and time, works very well on sort of planetary scales and even human scales. And so in that sense, it's a tremendous success. But there's still room for improvement, since this theory fails if you try to apply gravity down at the atomic scale. So the answer is yes, but as is often with science.
It's interesting. Try to convince on a lighter note somebody, if you take a 50-pound barbell and drop it, hopefully not on our foot, and if you explain to them in simple, the terms that you're going into in great detail, that it's not necessarily just the Earth pulling it down, but it's the warpage of space-time, well, that might be a convoluted type of situation, but it's so fascinating because as we talk, Doctor, on this particular show about the realms of astronomy and space and add on, all the way down the line, I find it so fascinating to talk now going deeper the other direction, because these great mysteries are something. I've studied this from school. I've studied this doing lectures, but not you. That's why we have you, Dr. Don Lincoln. Describe to us Fermilabs. This is fascinating because many people may get misinformation, and I read all these stories that I could make commentary on, like you, of course, can and will. That's a lot of misinformation, and it goes back to the stories of CERN, which we'll get into later, that some are saying, oh my goodness, they better stop those experiments with these particle accelerators because this is incredible. This could distort us and move us to another dimension. That's incredible. That's what? Kind of ludicrous, don't you think?
Well, it's not ridiculous to ask the question, and I want to
I respect the question, right?
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's amazing.
But I can tell you why we know we know it's not true. Now, I could tell you we know it's not true because we can do calculations and prove that this is a silly question. But it would be reasonable to suspect, well, maybe my theory isn't correct, and maybe I don't really understand things well enough to definitively say that it's safe. But I have a way of proving that it's safe that has nothing to do with theory. You see, what we do at Fermilab, or for that matter, any particle accelerator laboratory, is we accelerate subatomic particles, in the case of Fermilab protons, to near the speed of light, and we smash them into other protons. So basically, you think of one proton as a bullet shooting at a stationary bullet, and that's kind of how it works. And that actually does generate a tremendous amount of energy in a very, very small volume. It's very hot temperatures. It's much hotter than the center of the sun, and that all sounds very scary. However, and this is the thing that's really important, the universe itself also accelerates protons. So there are these things called cosmic rays from space. The very, things like black holes and neutron stars and so forth have very strong magnetic fields, and they accelerate protons to speeds and energies far, far higher than we can generate at a laboratory here on Earth. And these protons fly across the cosmos, and occasionally they will hit the Earth. And so when these high-energy protons hit the Earth, of course, the Earth is surrounded by the atmosphere, which is made of atoms and protons. And so the protons of cosmic rays smash into the protons of the air.
are higher energy than anything we can generate at the particle physics laboratories, and this has been going on since the Earth was formed 4 billion years ago, and we're still here. So if there were any inherent danger, forget about particle physics laboratories, you would have to worry about this happening from space, and it doesn't. And so consequently, there's nothing we can do at a particle laboratory that even comes close to what space does. So that's why you absolutely don't have to worry about this sort of thing.
Well, I appreciate your time in clarifying that, because I read, I'm sure you read too, maybe some of these articles are not totally science, and they try to alarm people, and that's what we want to do here on the Dr. Sky Experience, always separate fact from fiction. But going deeper out into the cosmos, isn't it true? I mean, we see cosmic rays as a concern, for astronauts on potentially long-duration space missions, and either even those closer missions, like we're looking at Artemis 2 launching to do a, translunar injection, as they call it, or simply to go around the moon. These are concerns for future space travelers at the energies that you don't want to see. How do you build a spacecraft to, quote, shield, and can you even shield from these cosmic ray particles that you're describing more powerful in space? I think that's quite fascinating to discuss.
Right. It's important to remember that the cosmic rays that are of danger to astronauts mostly are coming from our sun, not from other star systems. So, and there are a lot of those. I mean, the sun is, after all, a huge nuclear furnace, and it's boiling off all sorts of gases that fly off into space. And if there's a solar flare or an ejection of solar material in our direction, that is potentially very dangerous for astronauts. That's different than the cosmic rays, the super high energy cosmic rays that I was talking about. The super high energy cosmic rays are very, very rare. The ones from the sun are very, very common, and they're lower energy, but there's a lot of them. And so, yeah, you have to be really worried. I mean, if some kind of ejection, coronal mass ejection, which is just the ejection of material from the sun, happens when astronauts are in the wrong place, that could indeed be terribly, terribly dangerous.
Absolutely, and not to mention the plethora of satellites that we have, whether they be SpaceX Starlink or any other type satellites in space. A good dose we've seen, about a year ago, May 10th, a large solar massive ejection, a big CME. There could be in the future if we don't have a way to protect us. But the interesting part of this conversation, Doctor, is going down into the smallest way. In other words, from what we see as humans standing on planet Earth, looking deeper into the cosmos, the work that you do. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, and we appreciate you always on the Dr. Sky Experience, our special guest for these 2 hours is Dr. Don Lincoln, an American physicist, of course, talking about his participation with Fermilabs and so many other things that they do. Your questions and comments, and I'd hope you'd get in early, ladies and gentlemen, with questions on this particular subject that I myself cannot answer and would never try to. The contact number is 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. We like to call it Theater of the Mind, Doctor, and the reason for that is we're obviously sitting here and listening, and that's a good thing. We're not watching visuals, but it's also important to participate, ladies and gentlemen, in the conversation. Let's go back to the formulation of quantum theory, and if I'm correct, we're talking about something that's maybe 100 years old. This Solvay conference that we talk about, and many people in schools I've talked to, and in seminars I've attended, they talk about some of the world's greats, from Einstein, so many other people, Madame Curie, Max Planck. I mean, go back in time and talk about this, because 100 years almost to the date, this is the earliest formulation of this massive subject. We're only just touching the surface of what's really out there. Describe that whole conference, if you would.
Well, the theory of quantum mechanics, as you say, was really sort of, the beginnings was 100 years ago. And it really completely changed our understanding of how the laws of the universe actually operate. Before that, we believed in basically Newton's laws and the laws of electromagnetism, which are deterministic, so suggesting that if you knew the configuration of something, a baseball, say, and you knew where it was, you could calculate at all times in the future where it would go. Basically, that's a fancy way. If you threw a ball, you'd know where it would go, and you could calculate that.
Correct.
But
yes.
But it changed. It changed in 1925, where And we realized in the quantum realm that wasn't the case. If you had all possible information and you tried to make a prediction, you can't predict where a subatomic particle will go, a proton, an electron, a neutron, a photon, any of those things. All you can do is predict probabilities. You say it has, a 10% chance of this, a 20% chance of that, a 30% chance of something else, and then you can do the measurement, but you won't know where it will go. You just know where it might go. If you do many, many, many measurements, you'll see that your calculations are correct. And this fundamentally changed our entire way that we think about the world, because it runs counter to our intuitions. In our intuitive big world, if you drop a barbell on your foot, you know it's going to fall, it's going to hit your foot, you know it's going to hurt. But in the quantum realm, if you drop that, it might hit your foot, it might pass through your foot, it might go somewhere else. And that's just very, very weird.
It is. It's very strange. And let's do this before we go to the hard break. And again, 1-800-848-9222. A fascinating guest, ladies and gentlemen. One that I've wanted to get for quite a long time, talking about the mysteries of subatomic particles, particle physics, and all the things that you may hear, which may be incorrect, that if CERN or these labs like Fermi Labs do continue to do this great research with high-energy particles and high-energy physics, I've even heard, to the ludicrous commentary that some have made, and again, you're going out and qualifying this, that, wow, the whole Earth could be vaporized if we go into a black hole with this, maybe more science fiction. But let's take this. It's a complicated subject for many, but I know you're the guy, the answer man on this. Let's take the basic atom and break it down as you go into these substrates. What are we listening to or about? Because this is the theater of the mind. Going from one atom, what are we going down into, and what's in there that now you're going to tell us about that goes into the quantum realm?
All right, so basically you're asking what's the makeup of an atom. So people have heard about this perhaps in high school. An atom, maybe this is an imperfect picture, but if you can think of the atom as sort of like a tiny solar system. It has a nucleus at the center, which has a lot of mass, and then it has electrons swirling around it at large distances. And by large, of course, it's still very, very small, but large compared to the center. And, unlike the solar system where the planets all go in the same plane when they orbit, that's not true with electrons. They can go in that plane, but they can go anywhere around, just orbiting the nucleus at the center. So you have electrons, this big cloud of electrons, and we could spend a whole hour talking about all of the weird things about how those electrons do what they do. But for the moment, think of it as sort of a swarm of bees surrounding a very small thing at the center called the nucleus. And this is effectively the same as the sun, if we go with our solar system analogy. This nucleus actually consists of smaller particles within it called protons and neutrons. Protons have an electrical charge, and they are the thing that hold the electrons in orbit. And the neutrons are just there, and they're heavy. They don't have electrical charge. So that's kind of neat. So if you think of the nucleus of the atoms, I like to think of it as it's very similar to a bunch of marbles that was handled by a toddler with sticky fingers. So all of the marbles are all sticky, and they kind of hold together. Now, if you go even deeper, if you go inside the proton and inside the neutron, there are even smaller particles within them. And the ridiculous names, they're called quarks, which is not the sound that an Australian duck makes. So they're quarks.
It's hilarious.
I like that. And then there are other things that hold the quarks in the proton, and these particles are called gluons. And why are they called gluons? Well, they're because they glue the quarks together. And so that kind of is as far as we know. We know that inside a proton there are 3 quarks and these gluons that are flying around holding the quarks together, and the same thing in neutrons. Now, it remains possible, and in fact, if you ask me, I think it's very, very likely that the quarks themselves have things that are even smaller. Now, absolutely absolutely nobody should believe that. Not one listener should believe the statement that there are things inside quarks, because we have zero experimental evidence that it's true. This is just sort of my intuition, my prejudice. I think that's probably true, but you should be completely skeptical.
Nobody really knows, right?
Nobody knows. And this is one of those cases where it's really important science that you should never believe what you think. So I think this is true, but I don't believe it because I don't have evidence to prove it. But anyway, so that's what we think is, you've got the nucleus of the atom, you've got these protons, and inside the protons, there are these quarks flying around. And these are the sorts of things that they're the building blocks of everything. And even the coolest thing is if you go way back in time, immediately after the Big Bang, when the universe was hot, there were no atoms. All there were quarks and electrons flying around in this great mishmash. And it was only later, when the universe expanded and cooled, that atoms formed. And so that's kind of why it's really neat to talk about these subatomic particles, because not just because of how they make up the matter that makes up us, but also it is a way, by studying these, to actually literally recreate the conditions of the Big Bang. So by smashing atoms together like we do, we are able to actually recreate what the Big Bang was and understand what it was like when the universe was created, which is like...
No, that's amazing stuff you said as we go down to the bottom of the hour here. So, ladies and gentlemen, our class will take a brief recess as we continue with Dr. Don Lincoln, American physicist. He's talking with us about so many things that go into the tiny world as we look out to the mega universe, allegedly formed some 13.8 billion years ago. And if you ask the question, who formed it, we'll have to do about 400 hours of speculation on that. But ladies and gentlemen, most important to us here on the Dr. Sky Experience is your participation at 1-800-848-9222 as we move into the mysteries of the universe with our very special guest talking about these things. And boy, folks, you ain't heard nothing yet. Wait till we return with your questions and comments on this most momentous moment on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Sean Castle.
All right. Take a break right there. And let me answer a few things in the chat. Let me go back to Wilbur. Hunter Wilbur. I think I like this Dr. Sky guy better than Coast to Coast AM. Well, he's a regular guest on Coast to Coast. But ABC, WABC, I guess they, I wanted him to do his own show. So now he's doing his own show. I know he has a podcast for quite a while. So he's been out for a few months now on WABC. So this is his own show on, Saturday morning from 12 midnight to 2 a.m. And then, of course, now Sunday morning so he's on the weekends from midnight to 2 Eastern time. And I believe he's also syndicated. So, it's coming from WABC, but I believe it's also syndicated. But yeah, I do like it because it is kind of coast to coast vibe, except it's Dr. Sky. Okay. And RT08, hello, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I hope James gets through. We'll see. Fermiland, Batavia, Illinois, accelerator was shut down in 2011. Okay. And you used to be able to take tours to the facility. Okay. Yeah, so let me see where we at now. Okay, so they're still talking now. Yeah, Fermi. By the way, the school that my son goes to, he goes to the public school, is Enrico Fermi. That's the name of the school. Enrico Fermi Public School in Yonkers. So that's the name of his school, Enrico Fermi. It's actually named after the Italian physicist. He is the first man that created fusion, right? Nuclear fusion. It was in Chicago. University of Chicago. It was under the bleachers. They had some kind of, I don't know, it was a reactor or something, but basically it was Enrico Fermi that actually created, nuclear fission. So, very important man, Enrico Fermi. And of course, after that, and of course he fled. I believe he fled Italy under Mussolini. So, it's pretty cool that Einstein wrote that letter to Roosevelt warning him that, just imagine if the Germans would have came up with the atomic bomb first. How that would have changed the course of history. But of course, we defeated Nazi Germany, and that never happened, and thank God it didn't. All right, back to the show.
And you're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience on 77 WABC. The world can be a ball of confusion.
I think I can safely say that nobody understands quantum mechanics. A quote from the late great physicist Richard Feynman. 33 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, and class is back in session after our short recess. Our special guest is Dr. Don Lincoln, an American physicist. His YouTube channel, Fermilabs, is someplace you want to go, ladies and gentlemen. And he's the author of a number of books, one which we'll get into later, Einstein's Unfinished Dream, Practical Progress Toward a Theory of Everything. Doctor, thanks, and the phone lines, as I would expect, are lighting up here, brighter than a supernova. So let's continue with our special guest. And, ladies and gentlemen, you, the callers, we say good morning to Charlie in Cherry Hill. Good morning. How you doing, Charlie? You're on with Dr. Don Lincoln. How's it going?
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. And good morning to you, Dr. Lincoln. I was listening to you talk about quantum mechanics and physics and stuff, and the question I have for you is something that's happening contemporary. Today's news, and I was wondering if you could comment on whether it has to do with physics or not. So they have this, it looks like a small handgun, but it doesn't fire bullets, but it fires these waves out of like a cone-shaped type thing, and it's caused Havana syndrome in like American CIA agents in Cuba, and they have it now, and you fire it, and it fires waves, and it either hits a person or a crowd of people, and it causes the inside of the head to feel as if you're on fire, as if the brain is on fire, and it causes the person naturally to pass out and to vomit, or the crowd of people you're firing at to pass out and vomit. And I was wondering what Dr. Lincoln thought about that, and how is that involved in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, if in fact it is.
Yeah, Doctor, is any correlation that you can give us? A little off subject, but it also, I respect our caller, Charlie. He's got a good point.
Well, it's an interesting question, Charlie. So the thing is, what you're describing, I haven't actually touched the equipment that you're describing. I've read about it in the news. But this doesn't have anything to do with quantum mechanics. This is essentially a radio transmitter, probably. So it's basically a microwave. And yes, absolutely. Microwaves weapons have been created for crowd control stuff, and it's a real thing. Now, whether or not the apparatus that we hear about in the news is what caused Havana syndrome or not, I can't say. I know what you do because, well, we read the newspapers.
No, I'm not live streaming on Discord.
That absolutely could be true. It makes perfectly good sense to me, but it doesn't have anything to do with quantum mechanics. It's effectively a microwave gun, kind of, sort of.
Yes, Doctor, and I just want to mention to Charlie, I spent a lot of time in the law enforcement world, and we had some products that we used to see at different trade shows, and this goes back about a decade ago. But Charlie, those were, as the doctor was saying, microwave and also acoustic-type weapons that would do these very interesting, powerful white noise generations so that your head felt like it was just coming apart if you were in that beam.
Where people can be safe.
But again, the good doctor answered, it's not necessarily related directly to something from the quantum.
That's why I'm
Charlie, you got a response here back, and we got to move forward. Please continue.
But you're saying it would be useful for crowd control?
Well, we saw that. I mean, I'm onto the law enforcement side of this because I experienced this. It's absolutely in crowd control, and without talking about the denial access weapons, which are microwave, they put these big things that look like a giant square antenna on top of, let's say, a Humvee, and they've demonstrated this many times. Not only
of course, in the future, I may
but when they hit
stream
you
on
with
Discord,
those
but right
microwave
now, no.
particles, you
I would like to
obviously
get some
start to
members
heat
first.
up like you would put something in a microwave oven, and unless you're, Superman or Iron Man, you'd probably be running for the hills, so it disperses people and animals because it does heat up your internals. But Charlie and Cherry Hill, you bring up some good points, which the good doctor did address. Thank you for being part of the show. Let's move on to Edgar in the Bronx. Good morning. You're on with Dr. Lincoln. How are you, sir?
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call. The question that I have is, I know quantum physics is very, very, very esoteric and all that. So this is my question. Somebody who dies in the year 2026, can that person be reborn in the year 1953? And under what?
Interesting time, like a moving through time and space, going backward like a time machine. That's interesting.
So you're asking if a person who dies in 2026 can be born in 1953. So I want to make sure I understand that question.
I'm trying to figure it out too. Is it like a time moving through time, like a time machine? Is that what you're kind of asking or alluding to?
Well, I guess because of the nature of the science, would that be at all possible, given the esoteric nature of this whole science thing, and that understanding that that person is an entity, and I would say that entity.
I'm going to lower the volume for a second. Sometimes you get bizarro callers. They make no sense. And they're just like, okay, what is this guy talking about? What is he trying to ask? Jeez. Yeah, so anyway, no, I'm not streaming on Discord. In the future, well, I may, but, my audience is here on YouTube. The reason why I want people to join Discord because I've been to a few other communities, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. So I have my Discord for a couple of years now, and I would like more people to join there. That's all. Because I'm ready to leave a few groups.
It doesn't respect forward or
because of some knuckleheads.
More than it respects left or right or forward.
Including Psycho Kid.
However, once you get to complicated objects, bigger objects like people, or they don't even have to be that big, but where there's many atoms, there's a lot of particles involved, the laws of nature conspire to say that when you have a bunch of them, they can only move forward in time. Now, I'm in the business of learning new laws of nature. That's what I do. That's what research is. So it is, it's worth talking about the idea of maybe there is some undiscovered physics that would allow us to go back in time. But I can tell you that to the best of our knowledge, right now, this does not appear to be a possibility at all.
Okay, you get the last word because we got a full board of callers, but we always respect the questions. You have a final comment? Please continue if you do.
No, I just appreciate hearing that answer.
Well, thank you. And Doctor, would it be something like this? Because you're talking about something here that in space there's no direction, let's say. So the cosmological principle, which I understand, doesn't the universe look the same in every direction? At least that's what we think, or we don't know that at all. Is that relative to what we're talking about?
Well, we do know to a significant degree the cosmological principle that you described, the Copernican principle, that basically no place in space is special and all directions look the same.
Right.
Now, that's a statement, but it's also a statement you can test, and there have been a large number of tests, and to basically the consensus is that is true. Now, there have been a few measurements that suggest that there might be a direction in space that's somewhat different than others, or that perhaps space is not definitive. So I would say that the correct way to think of this is the vast majority of our understanding is that, as you say, the Copernican principle, no place is special and all directions are the same. However, it is a fair question. It's something we measure, and people find hints and they continue to look. But right now, that doesn't seem, there doesn't seem to be a special direction.
No, I mean, all of that seems so strange. We had a gentleman on, Dr. Rizwan Virk, a multi-billionaire in the gaming industry, and his book that I interviewed him a number of years ago was called The Simulation Hypothesis. And he believed, without the details of the science that you have, but more of his own research and philosophy and all different things, religion, he believes that everything that we're experiencing, maybe right now in this iteration of the Dr. Sky experience, that it's all controlled by something behind the curtain, kind of Matrix-like. And I found that to be totally fascinating, because what if, since we really don't understand time, we don't really have any way, like you described, we can't go backwards in time. But isn't that an interesting hypothesis? I mean, it just doesn't sound silly to me. It sounds, I like to keep an open mind, that maybe something else is controlling everything, what we think is consciousness and reality. That's a big subject too, don't you think, Doctor?
It is. The simulation hypothesis it's interesting, and of course the problem is some things are very difficult to disprove, because if we are in a simulation, then it will unfold, and if we're programmed properly, we might not even be able to do a test by construction of the program to test it. However, this is something that people have thought about, and I think the best way to think of it is still a science fiction topic, and
hey, Tyler Bird, I hope you're doing well, my friend.
There's really any
it's much better 8 kilohertz.
It's important.
I know, I forgot.
think this is really an important point. There
I'm
are
looking at it, I'm like, why it sounds
lots of
narrow?
ideas about how the world works, but there's only one right idea. And that's just like if you go to a library, there are lots of fiction books there that postulate something that could be, but just because it was written down doesn't make it so. And so...
Well, Dr. Lincoln, we're going to take a short break and a recess, as we call our classroom here on the air, in our experience here on the Dr. Sky experience. And ladies and gentlemen, we haven't gotten to Ted in Forest Hills, David in Pennsylvania, Frank in the Bronx, Stu in Brooklyn, how about Robert in the Tar Heel state of North Carolina. And you, ladies and gentlemen, we're here for 2 hours on this special edition of the Dr. Sky Experience. 1-800.
All right. They're going to go on break. I guess James is not on the queue. RT08, he's not on the queue yet. He just named 5 callers, or 4 callers, right? So he's not on the queue. I don't think he's getting through. Yeah, cool topic. Yeah, Dr. Sky on WABC. It's like coast to coast, from midnight to 2 here in the East Coast. Dr. Sky show here on WABC out of New York City. And I believe he's syndicated now. I mean, he got to be syndicated. He's been out for a few months now. So, hello, Tyler Burr. I hope you're doing well, my friend. And I'm sorry about the issue on your server. Apparently, you got some kid there that he's a troublemaker. He's just annoying. He's a troublemaker. I had to ban him from my channel. I had to ban him from my Discord. And I had to ban him from my FMDX web server. He is nothing but a drama queen, and I had to get rid of him. So I'm just giving you heads up. That's all. There you go. Okay. You as well. No worries. Yeah, I'm watching him. There you go. I provided a public service today. There you go. RT0. No, well, here's not snowing. No, it's already, we're going to get a little bit of snow tomorrow, and that's it. It's nothing. Okay, he's back. Okay, sorry.
From a classic physicist, Max Planck, a long time ago. 46 minutes after the hour, we are, ladies and gentlemen, privileged and honored to speak with John Lincoln,
okay, cool.
sharing his experiences about things that really, I think, are so important to understand in the world of what's down below the substrate of the atom. Let's say good morning to Ted in Forest Hills. You've been patient, and good morning. How are you? And your question?
Thank you very much. If I just could mention, I saw two B-36 Pigeon bombers fly over my house when I was like 5 or 6 years old. That's pretty good. I do want to ask, and it's very nice to Dr. Leakin, is the speed of light known why it has the speed of light? And was Isaac Newton a good scientist? If that could be...
Well, all right. Well, pretty good stuff. And you talked about the B-36, the magnesium overcast, the big bomber of, well, post-World War II. But, Doctor, take it away with the questions that Ted has. This is pretty fascinating.
All right. So first and foremost, Isaac Newton is one of the most brilliant scientists of all time. Arguably the most brilliant. So that's the first thing. Why is the speed of light?
Thank you, Tyler Bird, for the super chat.
The short answer is nobody knows. What it seems to be is that
you're even cooler, bro. I love you, bro.
Is a fundamental property of space itself. And here's the real kicker. We have to remember that we have space and time, but there's a combined space-time. And so it turns out that what Einstein really said is that we travel through space-time at the speed of light. So if we are sitting, minding our own business, not moving at all, we are traveling through time at the speed of light. And if we're moving through space, the fastest we can go is the speed of light. But exactly why that's the case, nobody knows.
Well, Ted, this is fascinating because we talk about this in our lectures and programs. I'm sure the doctor would agree. It's a known number. If you look at it in miles per hour, 670 million miles an hour. That sure beats my fast motorcycle or anybody's Tesla, if they have one of those Tesla plants. But, Ted, you get the last word. You're a great caller, and you want to continue on, please do so for a moment. I guess Ted's not there. Oh, you are there. Go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
Patience. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Let's say good morning to David in Pennsylvania. David, thanks for joining us on our adventure as we talk about these amazing things.
Good morning, Dr. Sky and Dr. Lincoln. Basically, are the particle accelerators Fermilab in the United States?
Yeah, if you could, David, could you just go off the speakerphone? That would help all of our listeners to hear your question and the doctor can answer. Go ahead and try that.
Are the particle accelerators used for electrical production? I want to comment on that.
Are they useful for
on Earth?
Electrical producing electricity?
Yeah.
No. Well, they use electricity to make the particle accelerators work, but they are not a source of energy. You could not have a particle accelerator and use that to generate your house. That's just not how they work.
That's interesting, David. You know, I would think just the opposite, but the doctor mentions no way, because imagine all that energy that's out there. You got a last comment, or continue, David, one more time?
In the winter of 2014, I want to see what Dr. Lincoln thinks of this. I worked on the theory of chaotic entropy. That would be the oceans or the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere or space, with its chaotic entropy creating electrical production for the people of Earth.
Well, another energy question, Doctor.
Unfortunately, without knowing better what precisely he means by chaotic entropy, I can't answer that because it would need to be defined better. So I guess I'll have to throw out my hands at this one.
Well, David, thank you for your participation. We're trying to get the caller board cleared out for the first hour here so everybody has a chance. Good morning to Frank in the Bronx. Your question or comment, a very timely subject, don't you think?
Well, thank you. I'm actually subscribed to the YouTube channel. I watch you guys all the time. Hi, Dr. Sky. I have two questions. Can you explain how a particle can be in two different places at the same time?
Well, that is one of the very enduring mysteries of quantum mechanics, and it's very non-intuitive. And it comes down to this whole probability thing. Prior to making a measurement, the thing is, you can't think of particles like we always do. They're not like little BBs. What they are is it's sort of like a cloud of places they can be. And so if it's a cloud, then that means the particle can be anywhere the cloud can be. And then when we measure it, it seems to collapse into a single place. And I know that sounds crazy, and you are absolutely, completely right to think that's just totally doesn't make any sense. But this is something that has been tested in great detail over the last 100 years. And as weird as it is, that's the way it seems to be.
Well, Doctor, I studied something called superposition, and maybe that helps Frank, too. That's interesting. And what? The premise and context there would be particles, what, can or should or do exist in two places at the same time? I mean, isn't that more the study of what we call superposition in the physics world? I just needed to know from you.
Well, superposition can mean that. But like a simple thing of superposition is if you look at ocean waves, if you see two waves and they cross over one another, you get a bigger bump where the two crests cross over, and that's superposition. Now, the thing with the quantum is that literally before you look at it, it's sort of everywhere, and that is just weird, but it's true.
Amazing. Frank, you get the last word. We're going to complete the caller board, but your comment, final comment, if you'd like.
How can something come from nothing? And does consciousness mean that I could be on a different planet consciously?
That's an interesting pretext. Right?
I didn't quite get it. Consciousness says you can be on another planet.
Right. In other words, a transformation, right, Frank? You're talking about somehow with a different level of consciousness, you could be in two places at once. I don't know. Maybe that's what you're asking, Frank. I think that's what he was asking, Doctor. Let's continue on. Thank you, Frank. We certainly appreciate you. Stu in Brooklyn. Good morning. Your question or comment as we move to the top of hour number one.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Quick question. The fusion energy, right now, the heat that's developed is enormous. There isn't a material on Earth that can hold it, so they have it trapped in a magnetic cage. Is there any role for quantum in helping us speed the arrival of fusion energy?
That's interesting.
Well, the thing is, quantum deals with the smallest of scales, so it's the size of atoms. But a fusion reactor is not the size of the atoms. It's the size of a house or a large building. And so the laws that govern the containment of fusion reactors are not quantum. Now, it's true that the individual atom fusings are quantum, but your question was about the containment, and that's just simply too big for quantum to have any relevance at all.
Stu, you get the last word. Please continue.
Yes, Steve, you said something about this guy you interviewed and things are being managed behind the curtain. If you just permit an old man an observation about Enrico Fermi, the secret of the atomic bomb was what Fermi had done, which was the chain reaction. When he almost blew up Chicago, it was no longer a theory. He had proof that it worked, and it became the basis for building the bomb. But the reason Fermi was in the United States in the first place was because his wife, who was madly in love with, was Aurora, and she was a Jew, and he was so concerned about her safety, he emigrated to the United States. So maybe there is something bigger.
Exactly. I said that earlier, right? He fled
Well, you're
because of
bringing up
Mussolini.
something interesting, Stu, and I know
Yeah,
the good doctor knows so much more about it because the
his
name
wife was Jewish.
excuse me, is the Fermi Labs. And isn't that true, Doctor, that the Fermi, when they did this experiment, I guess, on like a football field, it was what, trying to create this reaction in a graphite pile? Is that what the whole story with Fermi there? Is that in the simplest way?
Right. So they, as you said, a graphite pile. So it's essentially a large stack of charcoal briquettes with uranium in it, and they had rods in it that controlled the reaction, and they slowly pulled the rods out, and the reaction occurred. And yes, that was done underneath a football field at the University of Chicago back in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And thus the namesake Fermi Labs, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Stu in Brooklyn. Let's see if we can close out the hour here with Robert in North Carolina. You're on with Dr. Don Lincoln. How you doing?
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Einstein's unified field theory, where are we at in solving that? I believe dark matter and energy have thrown a wrench in the monkey works to solve those equations, to define matter, energy, and the relationships between them that construct the universe in the world of particle physics.
It's amazing, Robert, and Doctor, we only have about 2 minutes here, so I hate to cut everybody short. If you want, Doctor, continue with your explanation. But Robert, we could hold you over if you'd like to do that into hour number 2. But please continue, Doctor. I think Robert brings up something very fascinating.
All right, so Einstein did come up with a theory that showed that energy and matter are the same, and that, in a sense, was unified. But what he was trying to do, he's trying to come up with a total theory, a theory of everything, one that explained all phenomena. And he died without coming up with a successful theory, and that's, to this day, there is no such theory. Now, there's a lot of things we could talk about, but it's important to remember that that theory is not yet available to even the brightest of minds.
That's amazing. Robert, would you like to hold? I mean, we'll be happy enough to keep you over. If you'd like to continue this conversation, it's up to you. Oh, well, thank you, Robert, for your call. Ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching the end of hour number 1. Moving to time and space is the good doctor, Dr. Don Lincoln, of American physicist and Fermilab and Excellence Par. Let me say this. We're going to be talking in hour number 2 about so many of the things that the Fermilab does, move deeper into the discussion of these subatomic particles, and also talk about CERN, because I'm surprised we haven't had a call about CERN and what they're doing. And also, folks, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention something very, very important. The good doctor will talk about his co-discovery of something called a top quark. This is interesting. Not top shelf, like something you put in your microwave to eat quickly as you're on the run, microwave it. But not to be funny, we're also going to be talking about the mysterious item that's somewhere out there in the universe and now detected, called the Higgs boson. And you were part of the discovery, and part of that discovery team, I should say, back in 2012. Your questions and comments as we move through time and space, literally, at 1-800-848-9222. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Hour number 2 promises to be equally, if not more exciting, than hour number 1 on the Dr. Sky.
All right, there we go. We're going to take a little break. So let me read some of the comments here. Let me scroll down here. So, yeah, definitely cool topic. Yeah, it's awesome. I love Dr. Sky show. I mean, when I first heard this a few months ago, I was like, wow, he's on WABC. I got hooked. Because, you know, I love Coast to Coast. So this is another Coast to Coast. We need more of that. We need more of that on the AM dial. And even on the FM dial, why not? But we need more of this on radio. You know, too much, too much politics. I get it, people. I know. And we have sports, but we need more other, and this is great. I love this stuff. This is what I put next to my my pillow when I lay down and relax. I don't want to hear politics. I want to hear stuff like this. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, so, and again, thank you, Tyler Bird, for the super chat. Let's see what.
18th. Good morning. I'm Liz Radabali.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I means no. Yeah, anyway. You're on top of it, good. All right.
Over its 750 residents being left with no heat or working elevators and mold in some apartment units. Mayor Zoran Mamdani said ahead of the weekend that A&E will also correct around 4,000 code violations in 14 of its buildings across 3 of the 5 boroughs.
If your landlord does not responsibly steward your home, city government will step in. City government has real power to protect the millions of tenants across the city.
Mamdani says A&E had over 140,000 violations in total. He also says New York City will hold rental rip-off hearings in each of the 5 boroughs within the next 100 days. A former Nickelodeon child actor is dead after a grisly hit-and-run in Brooklyn on Friday morning. The victim has been identified as Kiana Underwood, who made her film debut at age 6 and later starred in the animated show Little Bill. The now 33-year-old was crossing the street in Brownsville at around 7 in the morning. Police say she was hit by a car going west, then was dragged for more than 2 blocks. The driver took off. An investigation is underway.
United!
Nurses are still picketing as negotiations have not made much reported progress. This is the largest nurses strike
How can
in
you hit
city
somebody
history. Around
and drag
15,000
them for 2
healthcare
blocks
workers
and
with
you
3
did
city
not
hospitals
notice?
walked off the job this past week.
That's
Talks were
crazy.
held ahead of the weekend between Mount Sinai and the nurses union. However, talks stalled with New York Presbyterian and Montefiore. Nurses are demanding increased staffing, better healthcare benefits, safety improvements, and higher pay. The hospitals which claim they can't meet those demands have hired travel nurses to help them maintain operations. The Justice Department is reportedly investigating Minnesota's governor and the mayor of Minneapolis. Multiple outlets cite U.S. officials saying Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey are being investigated for allegedly obstructing federal law enforcement. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche spoke about the probe with Fox News.
When the governor or the mayor threaten our officers, when the mayor suggests that he's encouraging citizens to call 911 when they see ICE officers, that is very close to a federal crime. The investigation centers on statements the two leaders have made around the thousands of ICE and Border Patrol agents deployed to Minneapolis. Their presence has sparked some protests, which have grown since the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer last week. President Trump has announced the next step in his plan for peace in the Middle East. Jim Roop reports.
President Trump taking to Truth Social to announce a board of peace has been formed to oversee things in Gaza. The president saying the members of the board will be announced soon and calling it the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time, any place. He went on to add that it is officially the next phase of Gaza's 20-point peace plan. I'm Jim Roop.
Former independent Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema is being taken to court over an alleged affair with someone on her security detail. Monica Nelson with more.
The case was filed by Heather Amell of North Carolina, which claims her 14-year marriage.
Okay, this is a stupid story. Must have been drunk. Maybe that, or must have been wearing earbuds. I'm going to say something bizarro. How can you drag someone for 2 blocks and you didn't notice? It must have been like some Final Destination craziness. Remember that garbage truck scene? The last Final Destination, I believe it was, where the woman got, she went in the garbage bin, and the garbage bin went over and the guy's playing headphones while he's driving, which is like, who the hell does that? Who drives with headphones on? This person must have been drunk and driving with headphones. How can you not notice you're dragging somebody for 2 blocks? Seriously, what is this? What is this world coming to? Wow, I'm sorry. Holy moly. Poor woman. Well, she's dead now.
Light rain and snow with a high of 35 later tonight. No for night.
God rest her soul.
Clear, low of 20.
Holy moly. They got to throw this book at this person. I'm sorry. That's just egregious. That is egregious. I'm sorry. For somebody to hit somebody and drag them for 2 blocks? 2 city blocks? Come on. They got this person on camera all over the place. This person, they're going to throw the book at it. They have to throw the book at this person.
Here's Dr. Sky.
All right, let me shut up.
You're with me, ladies and gentlemen, on the Powerhouse Blowtorch Signal. Talk Radio 77, WABC, broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City,
all right,
and around the world. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, with this powerful signal, beaming, of course, deep out into the cosmos.
That's just nuts.
We appreciate you and the conversation we're having in this Theater of the Mind episode as we return from recess and continue our classroom on the air. Yes, Theater of the Mind with tonight's adventure, our special guest, calling him a friend of the show, Dr. Don Lincoln, an American physicist so much involved with Fermilab. You can follow him on his YouTube channel, Fermilab, and many books, one entitled Einstein's Unfinished Dream, Practical Progress Toward a Theory of Everything. And your questions and comments at 1-800.
I don't, my wife watches them, so I sit there and watch it with her.
To be with someone.
Yeah, I've seen every Final Destination movie.
Particular subject. And thanks to our
that's why I know about that.
Making sure it all sounds.
She watches a lot of horror stuff.
Welcome back, Dr. Lincoln. Thanks for spending the time again with us. We
appreciate you. Enjoy the show.
Again, thanks. What I wanted to get into with you is a conversation on this whole subject, your book, entitled, as I mentioned before, The Unfinished Dream that Einstein had. Is it true that he may not have been a real firm believer, or what, a student of quantum mechanics and physics, as opposed to his doing thought experiments and his revelations of, these amazing theories, the standard, and of course his other theories that he came up with? Describe that. Was he really a firm believer of quantum mechanics, or he didn't really have any clue about it?
Well, I think Einstein, he was undoubtedly an absolutely brilliant man, and he was skeptical. I think he philosophically did not like the implications of quantum mechanics, and in all fairness, you can't blame him. They don't seem to make sense. But what he did, and this is part of his true brilliance, is he then understood it very well and thought it through and came up with a lot of what seemed to him to be very weird implications of the theory. And these are things that people hadn't thought through, but he did. And he said, well, if quantum mechanics is true, then this weird thing will happen or that weird thing will happen. And it took years for people to do the tests. But it turns out that the tests that he suggested were essentially definitively proving that quantum mechanics was real. So it was his skepticism, which I think was very valuable, that helped solidify our belief in quantum mechanics. But I think, like he, and for that matter me, it was always a little unsettled by the implications of the theory.
So does his, quote, spooky action at a distance, which I've read so many times and listened to other speakers talk about, is that his basically saying, I'm not really sure what the heck's going on in the quantum world, or does that have anything to do with that at all?
It does. It does exactly have to do with that. And that turned out, that was something that he said early on, and it was part of what made him so unsettled, because it somehow implied that two places that were separated by a large distance were somehow intricately connected, and that didn't make sense to him, and, well, it doesn't make sense to us even today, but it does appear to be true.
Well, help us out on this. And I was never good at mathematics, I'm honest with the audience. It wasn't my favorite subject, but it's like an inspiration, wouldn't you agree? Mathematics to some is like a musical talent or some other skill like that, but math wasn't really mine. But when we talk about thought experiments, describe this, what Einstein's doing, or any physicist. You're putting these equations on the board, and don't dare try to erase them. I'm sure that would be the death knell of anybody if you were a grad student. But describe this. He's going through, let's say, Einstein, a thought experiment. It's taking what? You're filling up that board with one problem that you're trying to link to the next one to get a solution? Or maybe I'm not even making it clear. Describe that whole process of writing everything out on the board like that. It seems like, well, they always told me in school, mathematics can be like spaghetti. You throw something on the board and hopefully it sticks. But in that case, describe these thought experiments like Einstein and other physicists. Well, what are they trying to link together? They're trying to find an answer.
Well, thought experiments and mathematics are related, but they're not the same thing. For instance, Einstein one of his thought experiments was simply to say, well, what would happen if you traveled along with a photon? What would a photon look like? Now, there's no math associated with that, but it's starting to get him to think in the right direction. And then once you have thought that through, then you can start generating the mathematics, because mathematics is a concise way of working through the implications of your idea. So the thought experiment gets you the idea. The mathematics allows you to take that idea and see where it takes you, where that thought ends up. So that's sort of how it works.
1-800-848-9222. The phone lines are open, ladies and gentlemen. Questions that you may have about the wonders and the mysteries of this subatomic world article in quantum physics. Our special guest, Dr. Don Lincoln, American physicist, and a person, of course, that you can follow on YouTube, his channel, Fermilab. I want to get into the meat of your one co-discovery here and other interesting things. In 1995, I'm reading this, you're the co-discoverer of the top quark, and I think in hour one you were addressing what quarks are. Talk about this. That's pretty exciting. I've never discovered anything. I thought I might have discovered a comet through hours, but describe the process, and what are we talking about at this co-discoverer of a top quark?
All right, so I tell, when I give public talks, I say that I discovered the top quark, but many things. So everybody's heard about Einstein's E equals mc squared, and that says energy equals mass and mass equals energy. So what we do is we actually convert energy into matter. And we do that by taking a particle accelerator, accelerating it to very high speeds, near the speed of light, and smashing them together. And that energy then creates something that didn't exist before, which is truly a mind-boggling thing, but it absolutely works. And so the top quark is a particle that is smaller than a proton, but it weighs as much as an entire atom of tungsten. It only lasts...
Wow, that seems incredibly impossible, but you're telling us it is real.
It surely does. And it lasts for less than a trillionth of a second. So that's pretty bizarre, too. So it decays
like an attosecond or something.
With a 10 to the minus 25th, much faster than an attosecond. An attosecond is 10 to the minus 18. So this would be a 10 millionth of an attosecond. That's how brutal. It's ridiculous. So it decays, and then you see its decay products. And it turned out to be a very difficult thing. It was not until the Fermilab accelerator began operating in 1985 that it was possible to put that much energy in one place at one time, and even then it took years to figure it out. Nowadays, we have a new accelerator in Europe, the CERN Large Hadron Collider, which is even higher energy than the one at Fermilab, and where it used to take us something like 6 months to make maybe a handful, maybe 30 or 40 top quarks, at the accelerator in Europe with so much higher energy and brighter beams, we make them one per second. So it went from being a discovery process to something that's now sort of blasé, things that's very easy to do.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible when we talk about these tiny, tiny things that are available, not even the blink of an eye. We're talking about, these tremendous, 10 to the negative, what did you describe, 20?
25.
10. That's even more incredible. So how does one detect that? I mean, you see it appears as just a little flash, and you capture that, or it's all theoretical?
No. So the thing is, this is really neat. You can't ever see a top quark. It decays too quickly, and that's just a fact now. Not all subatomic particles decay that quickly, but that one does. But that's the way we do it is in exactly the same way that a bomb investigator works. You know, the bomb investigator is never there at ground zero when the bomb blows up, or he's never going to investigate the explosion. But what he does is he goes into a room and he looks at scorch marks, he looks which equipment is broken, he looks at damaged walls, and by the effect of the explosion on the known surroundings, you work backward and figure out the details of the explosion. And that's the same thing with these top quarks. They are created, they appear very quickly, they decay, but they decay into things that do last for a long time, and those things travel and hit the detector. So then you have to look at the detector, see what hits where, and work backwards. And then from what you see in the detector, you infer what happened in that flash that's too short of time to actually see.
Well, help me on something, and the listeners, I'm sure, would want to know about this. I've taken many classes on this, but you're the expert and our guest.
Yeah,
here's an interesting thing. The four
we
fundamental
put our
forces
money
we
stuff
all
like
know,
this.
at least many people know, is, of course, electromagnetism. We have the strong and weak
Real
nuclear
science.
force, and we have gravity. And I've always heard this. I want to get your opinion if it's right. Of all those forces, believe it or not, gravity is what? The weakest of all those forces? Is that true?
It is indeed, but you have to be very, very careful because what you said, you will read in any book. It says that gravity is very, very weak. And yet, gravity governs the cosmos. I mean, it'll reach out between galaxies and hold them together, whereas the other forces have no effect on cosmic scales. So when we compare the various forces and they say which ones are strong and which ones are weak, you have to actually answer that at different distance scales. And being that I'm a particle physicist, and we think that the correct distance scale is the size of a proton. So on the size of a proton, gravity is incredibly, ridiculously weak, and that is true. But when you think about on much larger scales, like the cosmos, gravity holds the cosmos together. So it's very important to remember that answering which is strong and which is weak depends a great deal on how far apart two things are separated.
$480 million.
Well, yeah, thank you for qualifying that, because simply reading it, you would say, well, gravity's the weakest. So then, without going too deep into this, because I want to get our listeners involved in this, 1-800-848-9222 as class continues after the short recess we had at the top of the hour. And if you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this powerhouse signal that's beaming out to the universe, Dr. Don Lincoln, an American physicist, particle physicist, Fermi Labs, we're talking about his YouTube channel and many of his books. But this is fascinating stuff. I mean, it just defies anything. 50 years ago, we would be sitting there going, what? There's things that are even smaller than the atom. I mean, that's totally mind-boggling, and I'm sure the audience probably feels that way. But here's something I want to jump into, probably the creme de la creme of this whole conversation, in my opinion. This mysterious particle that was thought about by a physicist with the namesake Higgs. This is something interesting. In 2012, the world is announcing that you folks, meaning you're part of the team, what the heck is a Higgs boson, and does it really indeed have something to do with adding mass to something? That's all I know from my research.
All right, so that's really kind of tricky because, of course, there's a lot of bad reporting on that. So there are two separate things.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. One is the Higgs field, and one is the Higgs boson, the Higgs particle. The Higgs field is what gives mass to subatomic particles. The Higgs boson is a way to see the field is real. So one way to think about this is the Higgs field is this energy field that permeates the entire universe. It's everywhere. It's in everything. And it's sort of like taffy, for the lack of a better word. And some particles interact with the taffy, and some particles don't. And the ones that interact with the taffy, they have mass, and the ones that don't have no mass. So that's the thing that gives mass to particles. Now, but you can't see the field because the field is in all of us. But if you vibrate the field, you can see the vibration. And the vibrations are the Higgs particle, the Higgs boson. So you're seeing vibrations of the field. The vibrations are what we discovered. And from that, we infer that the field is there.
So the average person on the street, when they hear this, why should they think this is important? And no disrespect to the research, what does that add to the value of what science is doing? Your discovery, of course, as a co-discoverer, and our team, from we talked about the top quark. What should people know about this, and why is it important to furtherance of knowledge about our universe?
Well, there's a couple of answers to that, and I could actually spend an awful long time with that one. But there's sort of three answers, and let me do them very, very briefly.
Please do. Yeah, go ahead.
One is, if you look at the very earliest writings that have been discovered, things from 5,000 years ago, they were asking questions like how the universe came to be, what are the laws of nature, and things like that. Now, there was a very different way of thinking back then, but these were questions that bothered people 5,000 years ago. They bothered people 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, last year, and even today. So this is something that's inherent to human nature, to understand these really, really big questions. Now, that satisfies some people, but not others. The second and third answers are much more practical, because when you turn loose scientists to answer these hard questions, there are always spin-offs. For instance, the big particle accelerators allowed us to make very powerful large magnets, and those magnets are now used in MRIs in hospitals. So if your kid twists your ankle playing soccer, you have several steps removed, you have a particle physicist to thank for making big magnets.
And just put earplugs in your ear when you hear that sound. There you go.
Yeah.
Obviously, the technology translates. I mean, I've been in many, and not to be funny, Doctor, they put me in one of those, and I don't know about you, but I kind of become a little claustrophobic, and boy, they looked at me and said, well, you're going to go in there for 20 minutes. And I go, really? Okay, no problem. And I go in, they slide me in. As soon as I heard that sound, I looked up and I had to get out of the thing. So shame on me, but maybe not, because that's another phenomenon in the psychology world, claustrophobia, right? But no, it's amazing. I'm getting the connection that you have this whole thing with what these research particles and discoveries are also doing to help us. And you've alluded to medicine. Let's go to the callers here.
Final
because I wanna make an
Destination.
apology. We have Silas.
Last
Staten
Final
Island.
Destination
Silas, you've been
movie
holding
that
for
had
so
an
long.
MRI
Good morning to you.
death.
You're with Dr. Don Lincoln. Thanks for being patient. Thanks for being
It's a
patient.
Final Destination death too.
I wonder, couldn't we just generate electricity?
Oh boy,
just
MRI.
like the solar powered generators that you can buy now? Why couldn't we have, an electric motor turning a generator? You have the solar power going to the electric motor, and then the electric motor is spinning the generator. The reason you turn on a light bulb in your studio is because there's a generator being spun somewhere, and or we could put small scale nuclear power turning large motors. We've had small nuclear power in submarines and battleships since forever. Why couldn't we just go low?
Yeah, I think the doctor was saying, Silas, I think he was saying that you cannot, hopefully I'm not repeating something incorrectly, I think you were saying, Doctor, that you cannot harness the power from these particle accelerators, and maybe Silas is thinking you can. I don't know. What say both of you?
Well, no, I mean it's simply turning a generator with electric motor that's powered, and the electric motor is being powered by solar energy. You're taking power cells that are powered by the sun, and you're just scaling up. I remember that show Forbidden Planet, where you just did 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 and just keep scaling up.
What a great movie that was, Silas. But, Doctor, I don't know how to answer that, and that's why I turned to you, because I think I'm hearing what Silas is asking, but I think you may have a better understanding of this.
Well, the thing is, solar power creates electricity already, and so it would be used to turn a motor, and then the motor would turn a generator to make out electricity, but friction means that you always get out less than you put in. And so the way solar power works is you don't have to go through a generator. The solar power cells generate electricity all by itself, and then that power can go out on the grid. You just skip the generator stage altogether. Now, the other question about nuclear power, sure, nuclear plants, you make the power gets hot. I mean, the reactor gets hot and boils water, and that'll turn a turbine and make energy. But with solar power, you just don't have to go through that motor generator step.
Interesting, Silas. Your last comment on this? We always try to give our callers an opportunity to respond back.
That's what I meant. With a perpetual motion machine, you have to have more going in than coming out. And the sun is the more. The sun is the 1% more going in and only less going out, because all it's doing is turning an electric-powered motor, which will turn the generator. Because, you can buy a solar-powered generator now. It stores the power in the battery, and then you can take it out and run something with it. But it naturally degrades, and you have to power it up again.
Well, Silas, I think we're going to see some amazing discoveries coming, not only from what the good doctor's talking about and the relevance of how we can have better lives here on the earth, and it's in the same direction. But, Doctor, of course, you get the last word on this, and thank you, Silas, in Staten Island, for your insightful inquiries and your comments and questions. Doctor, you can I continue, please?
Well, just solar power is fantastic, and we should absolutely use it. It's not the only way to get energy, but yeah, there's a humongous nuclear reactor out there called the sun. Let's tap it.
Absolutely. And sadly, many people, of course, there's a pro and con in the whole solar story of how we do that. And just last night, Doctor, we had a gentleman on here talking about geoengineering. We won't get into it too much, but he was talking about something happening on the Earth where there's intentional and nefarious forces that are injecting things into the Earth's atmosphere to reduce the amount of sunlight. The story and the beat goes on, a most amazing story, as we talk with you, most impressive here, about these things that go in the subatomic world. When we get back from the break, we got a few more minutes here, the hard break at the bottom of the hour. We'll say, class, we'll take another recess here as we continue with Theater of the Mind, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that. We're not looking at a TV screen, as we do in many cases. Many of us have these giant televisions on the wall, but this is different. It goes back to the classics of early radio. where the imagination continues, and that's why we try to do our best. You're the one who can tell us if we're doing a good job. Theater of the Mind, our special guest, if you're just joining us around the nation, around the world, on this most powerful radio station with a long legacy of some 104 years and continuing proudly, broadcasting 24/7. Stories of American exceptionalism, truth, justice, and the American way. As we continue with the Dr. Sky Experience, we talk about things. But, Doctor, we always give everybody in this program, and I'm going to jump in here briefly if you don't mind, we give them a little sky report, and I want to continue just for the few moments before the break. If you look into your skies, that is, I know we've been Jupiter positive for the last couple of weeks. Jupiter, if you look into your skies, if it's clear, depending on where you are, the more east coast, it would be nearly overhead and moving toward the western sky. Jupiter, the magnificent planet, this giant ball of gas, now some 394 million miles away from your eye. Those of you with telescopes, if you do have them, check out some websites, theskylive.com, to learn so much more, not only about Jupiter, but Shallow Sky Jupiter, shallowskyjupiter.com, will give you the positions of the Jovian satellites that Galileo did this experiment. I'm sure the good doctor knows. January 7th of 1610, he takes this primitive telescope, and oh boy, did he get in trouble, defying what was taught about that the Earth was the center of the universe, and how dare anybody say differently. He showed people on the streets in Italy, or from his home, the amazing planet Jupiter with these little things that moved left and right. These were the great Galilean satellites. So much more, Doctor, as we talk about. When we come back, I'd really like to get into a conversation with you about the collision that we have, and I think it's a collision, of where the standard model and the theory of everything hopefully someday can come together and quickly. What would that do? That would just give us the theory of everything means we'd solve most of the problems in classic physics. Is that true?
Well, that's what a theory of everything is. The idea is that if it exists, then it answers all questions. And that is the goal of physics. The standard model is a step along the way. We know a lot, but there's a lot more to learn.
Well, we love it, and we're appreciative of you, Dr. Don Lincoln, again, our special guest. If we didn't get to you, Alexei and Eddie in Babylon, we will on the other the other side of this hard break. 1-800-848-9222.
Where's Jim from New Jersey?
Takes a momentary
or
break
James
as class takes a
from
recess.
New Jersey. He's not on the queue. What's going on?
And the wonders of the universe, both infinite and tiny in the microcosm.
I don't think he's calling tonight.
We'll be right back. Coming up.
All right. Yeah, I don't think James is calling at all because the phone lines are open. And I think he's not here. I think he's sleeping right now. Whatever. Okay, let me read some stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah. Tyler's Bert. I've been to Fermilab. Yeah, cool. Man, well, anyway, it's no longer now, but man, I would love to have gone there. Yeah, exactly, RT08. We need to put more money into this stuff. I mean, he, Steinberg said they have a $480 million budget. And that's a whole tangent I don't want to get into because, we're in the middle of the radio thing. But yeah, there is a lot of mismanagement going on. A lot of it is mismanaged. And some of it actually, I talked about it the other day. I'm going to call them Men in Black. You know what I'm talking about. They're like, forget about the president. Forget about all that. There's some, whatever you want to call it. That's where the real budget is going on. I'm going to leave it at that. Just, I don't have much time to talk about it. But yeah, there's just a lot of underhanded stuff going on. Yeah. RT08, they're doing research on CSU Fort Collins, Colorado, but lost federal funding. And that's another thing, too, I'm going to say one thing about it, because I don't want to get crazy political, but when you got a budget and you crying about transgender stuff, you're putting money on transgender studies, whatever, all this crazy nonsense, all this leftist stuff, instead of putting the money where it really needs to be at. That's my point. I'll leave it at that. Sorry, I don't want to get crazy politics here, but yeah. A lot of colleges are really going nuts. And that's why there's this whole back and forth about cutting off funding. Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to go there, but yeah.
Some say it feels.
Some of it is because, you know what? Colleges are crazy now. It's a lot of, lefty, crazy causes now, Here in New York City, of course, Columbia University, NYU, now we're dealing with anti-Semitism. So I'm going to leave it at that. You see what I'm saying? That's a whole nother rabbit hole. That's what happened with the money. It's really getting mismanaged now. Harvard, of course, same thing. Yeah. I cannot read everything before the break. Before it's over. But yeah, I'm sorry about that, Todder, that you went through that. I had an MRI years ago because I had a possible head injury. But I was okay. But definitely it is dangerous. Let me just check real quick.
A quote from another.
Okay, sorry, back. I'm sorry.
Erwin Schrödinger. His, of course, story goes on to a discussion, maybe later in this program, of the mysterious paradox called Schrödinger's cat. 33 minutes after the hour, we continue with Dr. Don Lincoln. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, your calls and questions. Let's say good morning to a friend of the show. Good morning, Alexei in Queens. How are you doing this morning? Your question.
Good morning, Dr. Sky. Pleasure to speak with you and your guest. And
thank you.
It's interesting. The scientific community has labored hard and long to understand the ultra microcosm and the ultra macrocosm. That is the realm of the atom and below, and the realm of the galaxies and clusters of so on of galaxies of open infinite space. We build these liniacs, vivitrons, cyclotrons. We tear atoms apart, and we gain some little bit of information. And we go to the macrocosm and do these huge space telescopes, and we're laboring on, we know the Hubble redshift, and we know this and that, and the formation of different types of galaxies, the star evolution. But we are missing something very critical in the study of science. We are not observing in a pure manner. We are conjecturing on what evidence or what information has come out of what we thought is going on, you see. So when you ask the questions, why do stars form? How is galaxies formed? The atom, where does the proton come from in the beginning? And all this, nobody even has a clue as to where it comes from. You go back to the steady state theory, which predicates that matter will arise out of nowhere from space. Space has an inherent value of...
Yeah, that was Fred Hoyle, I think, right? The steady state.
Yeah, Hoyle and Bondi and Bonner and all the rest. Mm-hmm. But the point is that in every cubic meter or whatever of space, a free neutron is born. And as we know, the neutron, and your guest would know this, of course, the neutron decays, the free neutron, and you get a proton and an electron. So here, out of raw space, you have the production of matter and energy.
And how does it all happen, right, Alexei? Not to cut you short, but we want our special guest to discuss this and give his perspective. You've asked a lot, and they're all great. Doctor, wow, that's a lot to talk about, don't you think?
It surely is. So how stars and galaxies form, we pretty much understand that. There were clouds of gas and gravity pulled them in, and eventually they became dense enough and the stars started to burn and galaxies accumulated. But at the core of that is, where do the protons come from? And our best understanding is 14 billion years ago, the universe was smaller and hotter, and it was full of energy. And remember, I talked about Einstein's energy equals mc
very quickly. By about 3 minutes, all of the hydrogen and all of the helium from which all of the stars subsequently formed was already in place. It only took 3 minutes for the nuclear reactions right after the Big Bang to make the hydrogen and helium. And we have a pretty good understanding of how that came to be. Now, it's completely fair to ask the details of how the Big Bang started and is what pulled the trigger, so to speak. Those are fair questions. But once the trigger was pulled, we have a pretty good understanding of the mechanisms that create the hydrogen and helium that made up stars.
Thanks, Alexei. That's a pretty good answer, don't you think? And you get the last word as we have a pretty big caller board here, but thanks for your contribution. Anything you'd like to add? We have to move on.
Yes, I do. Your guest is apparently a Bible-thumping believer in the Big Bang Theory, which is complete and utter nonsense. We are talking about the creation of the universe like a frozen dinner bought from a supermarket in the microwave. Later you have the universe. No, that's an incorrect assumption, number one. Number two, I will try to be as brief as I can. Number two, I am talking, when I say about the phenomena that are occurring in the universe, we need to open our eyes and open our minds and free ourselves from this current realm of theories and hypotheses which are very detrimental to the future of science.
Alexei, we've given you a fair shake at it, and Doctor, we want to move forward. Any response from you, or we'll just continue to move on with the callers?
No, just the steady-state theory has been pretty much discredited at this point.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alexei. Always interesting commentary. Let's move on to Eddie. He's been patient in Babylon. Good morning. How you doing? Thanks for your patience. First.
Well, I'm not patient. I'm enjoying.
There you go. Isn't it amazing, Eddie, that we have... This is such a detailed topic. It's so amazing because many things we don't know, and we're trying to get answers. What say you, Eddie?
If you were on from 3:30 to 5:30, I'd wake up and listen because John Cass told me about your show. And I know he's listening. And it reminds me of a physics professor, John Geschwindener, who was a meteorologist for the Luftwaffe until he said, this isn't going good. And he escaped through cross-country skis to Venezuela somewhere and ended up in Dowling College in Suffolk to teach me physics. He said, man, I'm not teaching you physics. I'm putting splinters in your soul to make you think. And he said, I know what I know, but that I don't know. That's what it was. It's what he knew, but he didn't know more. You know, he was always gaining and wanting for information. And the people that you have on your show, Dr. Sky, and you just do it all. And I'm thinking
well,
about...
we try. I mean, thank you, Eddie. No, I appreciate it because this is important stuff to talk about because let me say this, not to be on a soapbox here. Your commentary to me is great and the guests are better. And that's why I'm saying if people don't like this show, and I do hear from different channels, they say different things like they say to any host. But here's the deal. If anybody doesn't like what I'm doing, we only have I'm not the guy who wants to be the big talker. That's not me. It's always the guest, so let's not insult the guest, I would say, to people that don't like the show. Well, Eddie, you've given us a nice, approval here in our classroom. Let the good doctor respond, and thanks for your time. That's awesome.
Well, I'd like to thank him. I can't comment on his story of his physics friend, though. But
absolutely,
soul is a good
his
way
own personal experience, right?
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Well, here's something again. I want to tie this in. For anybody who wants to still call, there's time, 1-800-848-9222. Theater of the Mind is what we call it, and I keep repeating it because it's different. It's like old-time radio where you have the opportunity to hear from great people.
Exactly.
And again, great guests. Not so much the host, and I'm not putting myself down by any means. It's always about the great guests. I like to think of myself as like an air traffic controller, Doctor, that I'm trying to break all the airplanes in and out here and make sure the listeners are one of those aircraft coming in, and the guests are going this way, and the callers and our guests are moving through in time and space.
Just like my live stream
so
and my chat.
Got a couple of minutes before
I got very smart people in here.
Talk to us about this. the theory of
morons
everything.
do not need to come
How
on.
soon do you think that may be accomplished?
This is not the
as
chat
we
for
move from
you.
standard
This is
model?
not the
every
show for
day
you.
you're working and your teams. What's your speculation? How soon does that
This is
maybe
for
happen?
very smart, well-rounded individuals.
I think as my book says, practical progress.
There you go.
While a lot of newspapers seem to suggest that it's right around the corner, I am far less confident. I think we're talking a journey of hundreds or years easily. And it's important to remember that the first big step in this unification was Newton's understanding of gravity in the 1670s, and the next big step was the understanding of electromagnetism in the 1870s, so 200 years later. The step after that was in the 1970s, 100 years later after that. And the problem is to do a proper theory of everything, we will need to be able to do tests, which requires more and more powerful equipment. And, the first instruments you build are relatively easy, but as you try to build more powerful, it gets more and more challenging, just like it gets harder and harder for your car to go faster. You can step on the gas more, but it will eventually top out. So I think we will be slowing down. I think this is not a problem for a year or a decade, but I think we're talking centuries, if ever.
It's amazing. Almost up at the next break, ladies and gentlemen, but something very interesting. Doctor, I've spoken before about the subject of inflation, and not to get everybody excited out there, it's not what the federal government or governments around the world are doing with the financial thing called inflation, but as you know, we had Dr. Alan Guth here many times talking about cosmic inflation, and that big thing when we get back from the break. I want to jump into a different topic, cosmic microwave background. Why and how did it occur, if we can even answer that? Gravitation waves, the thing I was talking about our good friend Dr. Kip Thorne, antimatter, gravitons, and things like that, the strangest of the strange, much more with our special guest, and we call him a friend of the show, Dr. Don Lincoln, American physicist, particle physicist at Fermilab, gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, your calls at 1-800-848-9222. Class will take a recess, and we will be right back.
This is 77 WABC Newsroom Extra.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Nice. Let me read some comments here. So, yeah. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, Todderbert. RT08, there was an accelerator in Texas. I think, not sure if it's still operating. Okay. Many of my college chemistry teachers worked at Argonne Labs in Lamont, Illinois. Wow. Todderbert says, it wrecked my ears even with no protection. Yeah, it was loud. Had ringing for weeks, and my tinnitus got worse. Wow, sorry to hear that. RT08, I've ambu bag patients in MRI for a few hours before we got ventilator. That was MRI safe. Yeah, it's just crazy. MRI is really, I guess it's really bad for us. It is dangerous, though. We had a case here in New York a few months ago. It's about a year old now, where a woman was getting MRI. I guess the guys, the victim was the male, the son, but his mother was getting MRI. Elderly mom. And then what happened was, my son is he's hollering upstairs. So what happened was the mother, I guess, they were done with the MRI and they were trying to get her out of there. And I think she started complaining. And the son is in the other room. And he heard that. And he went into the MRI room. And mind you, this son had a big, thick chain. Not a gold chain. A regular steel chain. Like a steel link chain. And all suddenly he got sucked in. He got sucked into the MRI and it choked him. He died. The MRI was still going. And I guess because his mother was complaining, he ran in there. Now, of course, they messed up on a whole bunch of protocols. They're supposed to secure the facility. When I had my MRI, the facility was secure. My wife was not in the next room. She was outside in the waiting room, in another room. You're not supposed to have just somebody open the door and come in. There's no way that's supposed to happen. So they messed up on a whole bunch of levels. So that guy went in there with a chain around his neck. I've been talking about a big chain. I don't know, it was probably a big, because I didn't see the picture. But they said he had a chain around his neck. Now, I'm thinking it's not gold. Because gold, I don't believe gold is magnetic. Quote me on that. Please correct me if I'm... So he must have had a big, old chain, a regular steel chain around his neck with a padlock or something, whatever. Man, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Because, it had to be some really thick-ass chain. I'm sorry. To the point where he got sucked in there and he choked. I think it choked him. Or he broke his neck or something. I don't know what happened. Anyway, he died. He did die. And, all the comments was about, and I even said it, I said, that was some Final Destination death. It was so bizarro. And the thing is that this thing happens more often than what you think. Okay, so back to the thing. I'm sorry.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because I've heard,
in a
simplistic way, that if my body and an antimatter body...
It is very dangerous. MRIs are...
If they collided, they
super
would just
dangerous.
Annihilate each other? Is that even a fair assessment?
Correct. So first, antimatter is absolutely real. Guaranteed 100%. It was proposed in 1928, discovered in 1931. We can make it. It's real. And what you said is correct. If you take matter and antimatter and you bring them together, we say they annihilate, which is a fancy way of saying they release a huge amount of energy. If you were to take a paperclip of matter and a paperclip of antimatter and touch them together, the energy release is equivalent to the Hiroshima explosion. So
That's amazing.
It's an outrageous amount of energy.
That's mind-boggling. So with what you can tell us, unless it's a government secret, Defense Department's military, can there even, or has there been some way of actually producing that experiment that shows, wow, or have you said that they've already done that?
Oh, all the time. But we do it in such small quantities that it doesn't matter. So Fermilab used to be the most powerful antimatter production facility on the planet. And
That's
so remember
amazing.
what I said. A gram of antimatter and matter is a Hiroshima explosion. So we worked really, really hard for something like 20 years to make as much antimatter as we could. And if you took all of the antimatter we ever made and combined it with the same amount of matter, it would be about enough energy to take a 5-gallon bucket of coffee and warm it from cold up to room temperature. So
totally amazing.
What that tells you
These
is
are the mysteries.
incredibly hard to make antimatter. That's the bottom line. From a physics point of view, yes, it could be this outrageous weapon, but the reality is it would take something like 1 billion years to make to generate enough antimatter to make a single hydrogen bomb worth. And there's a lot easier ways to make hydrogen bombs.
Well, Doctor, I'm hoping that my antimatter and your particle out there does not meet anytime soon, because I'd like to continue to be around just like everybody. Let's close out the show. Maybe one of the last callers of the show. We welcome Peter in Massachusetts. You're on with Dr. Don Lincoln. Thanks for your patience. How you doing?
How you doing, Dr. Sky? I just have this conversation is extremely interesting, but I want to ask your guest, is there any conditions to where the Earth can temporarily lose gravity? And has it happened in the past? Can it happen? Because on social media, there's these viral posts that are saying that on August 12th, we're going to temporarily, for 5 or 6 minutes, lose gravity. And I would like the doctor to debunk that.
Well, Peter, you bring up something interesting, and let's pretend we're in the White House press office right now, and Dr. Don Lincoln is up on stage, And if that's a concern that the world might have, what would you say to the audience and this audience? That's interesting.
Well, I'm not nearly as accomplished a speaker as the White House press office, but the simple fact of the matter is gravity will never disappear. It's real. It's forever. It's not going to happen. So all that online stuff, that's just completely bunk. So I think we can all be very confident and, just sleep well that night.
Peter, you get the last word, and we'll close out our show in a few minutes. Go ahead. Peter, are you with us?
So under yeah, I'm still here.
Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. Please continue.
So under no conditions can the Earth temporarily lose gravity?
None. This is simply impossible. Gravity is inherently a property of matter, and as long as the Earth is made of matter, it will create gravity. And that's just that. It's not going to disappear ever.
Well, I feel good what you just said, Doctor, because I'll sleep better tonight, and I hope Peter will, and everybody who's called, or everybody who's listening on this vast audience. Let's go back to you for a moment. Ways that people can get in touch with you. We've mentioned YouTube, your channel, Fermilab. And is there any other way that people can get in touch with you that you'd like to share with us? Because I'm sure they have many, many questions, and we've only scratched the surface, as they say, so tell us more about you.
Well, I interact with an audience on Facebook. That's where my primary contact to the public.
Okay.
So if someone wants to look at facebook.com/dr.don.lincoln, that's me. And I cannot possibly answer all the questions I get there, but I do my best.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, and that's good, because with a subject like this, I'm sure you'd be bombarded, like particles from the universe. One last or a couple of different questions that I have from many people that have asked me these questions. I study astronomy deeply, lots of time at the telescope, lots of time with observational astronomy, etc. But we talk about something very powerful that lurks out into the universe, gamma ray bursters. Are we talking about energies that are literally off the charts, and what are they, and where do we suspect they actually come from, gamma ray bursts?
Well, this is actually more your expertise than mine, but the gamma ray bursters, there are a lot of possibilities, but one of the most common ways people think of it is perhaps neutron star mergers, where two neutron stars come together and collide. But there are presumably other methodologies for that occurring.
It's amazing. Your final thoughts on consciousness and reality. I mean, if we're looking at this, there's so many thoughts. It goes into philosophy, it goes into religion, it goes into all things, and maybe even in the quantum realm. How do you describe reality to the audience without being a medical doctor, and this whole thing of consciousness and reality? What would you say from a perspective of somebody that's in the the quantum world and particle physics? How would you respond?
Well, I'm pretty much an atomist. I mean, I believe that consciousness arises from chemical and electrical signals in the brains. So, you have to dig way down, but our thoughts can, come from biology, which come from the nature of the atoms that make up the brain. And there are some people who think that consciousness, there's like something, outside of the brain. And I personally find that to be not persuasive.
Interesting. Because I've read in so many ways, and I'm sure the listeners have heard this, that many people speculate that there's multi-planes of consciousness, not only in realities or dimensional differences. Some say there's upwards of 12 to 22 of these different dimensions. They go into a thing called Kalaba-Yau manifolds. I mean, this gets really technical. But from a classical physicist side, and the particle physicist, what would you say? I mean, are we stuck in this simple dimensional world that we think 3 or 4? How many do you think are out there from what you've studied?
Well, those dimensionality that you're describing, they're a potential aspect of a theory called superstrings, which is a possible theory of everything. And if superstring theory is correct, and it does suggest that there are additional dimensions, that's independent of consciousness. That's just, that their matter can move in more than just the forward, backward, up, down, left, right. And that's possible. We don't know. So far, all evidence says that we only exist in 3 dimensions, but I can't rule out the existence of additional dimensions. I can rule out the existence of have the 1 over r squared dependence that we see. This is a nifty thing. So that 2 in the 1 over r squared thing, that number, whatever that number is, that number plus 1 is the number of dimensions we live in. And there's a mathematical construct. So if we lived in a 4-dimension of space, that would go as 1 over r cubed. If we lived in 2 dimensions of space, it would go as 1 over r. So that particular number, that 2, tells you that we live in 3 dimensions. But that's 3 big dimensions. There's always the possibility there could be additional small dimensions. And that is something that is a credible hypothesis, but not one that we have evidence is true.
Well, Doctor, many thanks to you, and of course what you do at Fermi Labs, and for all the people that are part of your teams that study the quantum world, and also the particle physicists that are out there, many good ones like yourself. But I hope this offer would be a yes. We'd like to have you back, and would you consider to do that? And I hope we'd do that in the near future, if that's okay by you. What say you?
I'd be happy to come back and chat.
No, I appreciate that greatly. And finally, for me, before we really close out, is string theory really the deepest penetration into this micro world on
Hello, James
on our
Farley.
feet? Is that yet the smallest of everything? Below nothing
Hope
we see
you're doing
below
well,
that?
my friend.
String theory is an untested hypothesis. It is a neat idea. I like the idea, but nobody should make the mistake of believing it. There's never been a test to prove it's true, so we have to put it in the maybe category.
Amazing. Again, thank you, Dr. Don Lincoln. You can check him out very easily on the web at YouTube, his channel, Fermi Lab. Thank you for your time, and I'm wishing you the best as we move through 2026. Thanks for appearing with us on the Dr. Sky Experience.
And thanks for having me. Good luck to you.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up this show as we continue, thanking our helmsmen, Tony and Bill, and all of you out there. We continue next week with great subject matters. If you have email questions for me, it's drsky@wabcradio.com. And a big thank you to owner and operator John Katzimatidis, and from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, and everyone back there who makes WABC.
Oh, you just woke. I figured you was out.
Sensation. 104 years, growing strong, beaming ourselves out to the universe, and now we pass the torch.
All right, there we go. So Dr. Sky is over. He had open phone lines tonight, James. So I was thinking, I said, he got to be on right now, and he named 5 callers in a row, and you wasn't on the queue. So I figured, right, RT08, I said it. I said, James probably sleeping right now. I said, yeah, he got to be sleeping. So you slept so you missed the opportunity. Anyways, okay. We got next weekend. Anyway, thank you, James Farley. Thank you, RT08. Thank you, Todd and Bert, for being here. I love every single one of you. I'm going to sign off now. And you guys have a great week. I love you all. And thank you. Let me go all the way up there. There was a couple of more people up there. I'm sorry. I'll go all the way up there. Hunter Wilbur, Mike B. Thank you for being here too. So take care, everybody. Have a great week. Have a great week. Bye-bye. There you go. Love you all. Bye-bye.